And welcome to tonight's edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I am your host, Khari Mosley, here with my illustrious co-host, Miracle Jones. How you doing, Miracle?
I'm doing well, Khari. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. It's another Monday. We're 50, I believe 57 days out from the midterm elections. And tonight we'll be all talking about all the goings on with the midterms and everything going on in the world of politics. As usual, there's a lot going on. It seems like every Monday when we get back together, there's always a lot to talk about. So so Miracle, what is on your mind on this Monday evening, 57 days out? Which is very Pittsburgh, 57, Hans 57, it's a very Pittsburgh number, 57 days out of the election.
It is a very Pittsburgh number. And, this weekend it was the official launch and welcome back of, football. I was like so happy football season. I know it wasn't the best for some folks, but it wasn't the worst for some people either. The Steelers pulled out a win at the last moment. And so I know a lot of people were, happy that there was a win. They wish it would have been a little more, of a higher discrepancy between the numbers, but a win's a win. So it's a great start for the football season, But with that, there's been a lot of conversations about what's happening, around the world. Or there was, of course, the fallout from the announcement that, the Queen of England had passed on, or the conversations about the Ukraine being able to keep Russian forces on the defense, and even taking back some land and territories in Ukraine. And so a lot of stuff has been happening globally. In addition, with everything that's happening in the world, we still have a local, election here in Pennsylvania that every day it's like seems to be like something new, a new twist and turn. And so I feel like we're like as the world turns like right here in Pennsylvania when it comes to this election season. As a reminder, make sure you register to vote by October 24th. There's been conversations about the gubernatorial race, how intense it is. The polling has been changing from 20 points to 15 points. So it's still a very competitive race. There is always, it seems, more leaks or previous footage that one or another candidate said something. So Pennsylvania continues to be in the spotlight as one of the places that people are watching because it's going to be such a competitive race this year. Back to you, Khari.
Thank you for that, Miracle. Yeah, and on the issue of debates and the campaigns, we have. It looks like at least John Fetterman has agreed to at least one debate, and that's really been the big controversy in the PA Senate race, which is one of the most watched Senate races anywhere in the country. And John Fetterman has agreed to at least one debate. I know Dr. Oz wants to do multiple debates, and I know Lieutenant Governor Fetterman also requested some special elements of the debate, such as having like a closed captioning, because I believe what he has said that one of the effects of the stroke that he suffered in May was that like he's having some auditory issues and wanted to have the questions like printed or like on a screen that he could read so he could kind of keep up with the audio, with some of the audio issues that he's still having as a result of his stroke in May. So I don't know, how many debates we're going to have. It doesn't appear like on the governor's side they've agreed to any debates yet. So this is going to be a very unique cycle, Miracle, It could be a cycle where we have maybe one or maybe none, of the debates in the two marquee races statewide.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's of interest to a lot of people because debates are how you can determine how candidates are similar or dissimilar. But when it comes to Oz and Fetterman and his medical condition, it also highlights the way accessibility has played in elections and election protection and election outreach. And so it's going to be very interesting what they agree on because, Oz is a doctor. Fetterman is someone who's recovering from this unprecedented stroke as we've come off this great, disability creating event, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. And so a lot of people are going to need, accessibility and accommodations. And I think Fetterman has been able to tap into that part of the population. But people really are looking forward to these debates, especially because there's so many issues, even issues more than normal that are up, whether it's going to be gay marriage protections, legalization of marijuana. There was a story released last week that said that President Biden is considering pushing for the decriminalization of marijuana. So there's a lot of things that are at stake this election cycle that are very, very good for people. But also, I think sometimes people get a little overwhelmed about how much is going on that these races really depend on. And so it's going to be cool to see these two candidates come to the table, whether live stream or in person, and show how they differ, what are their positions on the issues, what policies will they put forward, and how they engage with each other.
Thank you for that, Miracle. One question, um, and one question that political pundits are asking throughout the state of Pennsylvania is: can someone win a statewide race uh, not buying television ads, not broadcast ads, cable ads, doing no television advertising? And that appears to be the gamble that Republican gubernatorial candidate Doug Mastriano is taking right now. It doesn't appear that the campaign has reserved any television advertising time in the month of September or October, and we know the election is on the 8th of November. So it is going to be a very, very interesting political gamble to try to win a statewide race without advertising on TV. But it appears that Doug Mastriano is going to attempt to do that.
Yeah, and I think it also goes towards the fact that Pennsylvania has very lax rules when it comes to pact and third party or private parties investments within elections, and so it'll be interesting to see whether or not some of these pacts provide ad space, and we saw particularly with the Summerlee race is that a lot of these PACs are not endorsing a candidate per se, but they're attacking, another candidate. We're seeing it in, the other congressional race in PA 17, where people are just attacking one particular candidate without endorsing another. And so it does seem that there are going to be people who are buying ad space. There's a lot of ads on YouTube, a lot of ads on Facebook, a lot of ads on social media, a lot of direct messaging ads as well, where people are downplaying one candidate instead of endorsing another. And so it'll be interesting to see if that strategy will pay off or for Mastriano. Again, we've seen Shapiro, who was just on the Sunday night sit down the other week, really hit the campaign trail, has been campaigning all across Pennsylvania. And something that's been very unique is even these hard, far, deep red cities and counties are still getting a Shapiro presence. And so as we come down to these final days, it'll see how that pays out for the candidates. Khari.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute for a second there as I was pulling up an article. But what I was saying was, this time of the year that most people really hate is the influx of television ads, and we are seeing um, influx of ads. We're seeing, particularly in PA 17, in the Schaefer Deluzio race for Congress, and Connor Lamb's seat that he will be vacating at the end of the year. And so I think there's going to be a lot of money spent in the Pittsburgh media market, particularly on that race. Is considered a swing district and a race up for grabs. So for those who love political ads, this might be your favorite time of the year. For those who hate political ads, get ready for the next 50 some days. You're probably going to see more political ads than you possibly have ever seen in your life, based on how much money is going to be spent in Pennsylvania, but particularly in the southwestern part of Pennsylvania, which is going to be a key, a bellwether region to determine who particularly wins these statewide races, but also wins, the one truly considered truly competitive congressional race in Western PA, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be the same type of money spent in PA 12 with Summer Lee and her Republican challenger, Mike Doyle, not that Mike Doyle, but another Mike Doyle. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the same level of investment, but it still remains to be seen. We're still 8 weeks out, so a lot can change over the next few weeks. But we can tell early that PA 17 is going to be somewhere where a lot of money is being spent.
Yeah, and I think also we kind of contrast this like 2020. What we haven't really seen as of yet is a coalition of candidates working and running together for a lot of these races. Thinking back to when the judges were running for Pennsylvania, you would see all of them together. They would do events together. They would be running and marketing together. We really haven't seen that type of endorsement process as of yet. Again, it's still super early. People are working, and engaging. A lot of people are unfortunately already announcing, seats and candidacies for 2023, and that may be causing some disruption. But we really haven't seen that strong endorsement process where people have been working together all across Pennsylvania. And again, it would seem, and what some would say is a lackluster a field that is not really energizing the base. You would think that people would be coalescing together, trying to bring people together all across Pennsylvania, and it doesn't really seem that's happening. And so it's going to be like very interesting again, as so much resources are being put into the gubernatorial and the Senate races, how these PA 17 races, the PA 12 races, these local races pan out, because again, there's so much interest when it comes to abortion access, marriage equality, student loan debt. These national issues are really present in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the places that has one of the largest student loan debt. We have the eds and meds here, so we have student loan debt and medical debt, but we also have some of the largest pride festivals that's happened in the past couple of years. And so there are issues and policies that really resonate with people all across Pennsylvania, regardless of political affiliation. So it's going to be very interesting to see what comes of these next 57 days, how people really unify, do cross endorsements, and really get out and turn out the vote. Because again, this is going to be such an interesting election. It's unprecedented. I know people hate hearing the word like unprecedented, but these are unprecedented times, as people are not only galvanizing online, but also in person. People are getting back into living in a world not only with monkeypox but with COVID-19, and trying to figure out what that looks like, and moving forward. And so these races are really changing, but also the amount of money in these races are changing as well, and the amount of new organizations are coming up. And there's also a conversation about people crossing parties and dumping money into races to pick candidates so that they're a candidate to go against. So there's a lot of conversations, as well as the Green Party has some candidates, Libertarian Party has some candidates. So it's going to be a very unique and interesting Pennsylvania election.
Yeah, absolutely. And over the course of the hour, we're gonna deep dive into a number of these races. Tonight, we had hoped to get on two of our good friends, Chris Potter from WESA and John Delano from KDKA, and we don't know, something may have came up. So hopefully, they'll still be able to join us at some point in the hour. We will keep you tuned. If not, then we will, go through the many important races, throughout, Western PA, and you know the role that Western PA will play in determining the outcome of the two major statewide races as well. But as we talked about, earlier in the hour, these races are really starting to pick up. The candidates are crisscrossing the state, at breakneck speed. They're holding rallies, they're holding events. The numbers I've seemed to have tightened since the summer. In the summer, I believe, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Fetterman, not necessarily had comfortable leads, but I think leads that were more comfortable than they are today, as the races generally tend to tighten, as we get closer to election day and more people start to pay attention to what is going on. So I think that's the phenomenon, that's happening right now. But again, we still, it still remains to be seen if there will be debates um, for the Senate race and for the governor's race, the two marquee races, two races that are being watched from all over the country for a variety of reasons. But it would definitely be quite unusual and more than likely unprecedented if we do have no debates when it comes to our gubernatorial and senatorial candidates.
Fact. And for people who want to know, like, what does it mean to have a gubernatorial debate? It's basically when the candidates who have been approved on the ballot, debate whether it, and traditionally people do at least three debates. Obviously, there's more, but people traditionally will do at least three debates so that people can ask specific questions, because governors have not only domestic but sometimes international responsibilities. The National Guard that gets deployed, not only just in Pennsylvania but is sent elsewhere, has resettlement responsibilities for accepting refugees from other countries. There are a lot of issues that people like to hear their candidates talk about, and have a deep dive that always can't just be on their websites. And so people like to have those debates in those forums. And so we do hope that we have those going forward. We'll be trying to put some on as well. But when people think of some of the policies that are being put forth, just recently, it was announced that starting October 1st, all Pennsylvania students are going to be enrolled in a universal free breakfast program. As people have been dealing with inflation and uncertainty, there's been a conversation about support for students and the funding for students. And this new policy is going to start October 1st. It's for all students across Pennsylvania, regardless of income or ability. So it's going to be a universal food program. And this is something that Governor Wolf has pushed for and advocated for. And so we're thinking about what is something that a governor does. A lot of times people think of just a governor signing or a vetoing legislation, but they're also pushing for policies. Governor Wolf has also talked about investing in communities with $2,000 investments for people who make under a certain amount of Pennsylvania. And so for these policies that are being put into place, you want to know if the Governor Wolf's successor will approve or disapprove some of these policies. Will they advocate and lobby to keep the funding where it is? Will they expand it? Will they reduce it? And so these are some of the things that people are very interested in seeing and interested in knowing from gubernatorial candidates. And again, this is, one of the most contentious election cycles for a variety of reasons here in Pennsylvania. And, in recent times, and there have been accusations of anti-Semitism and bigotry, also, as well as people saying that a lot of issues being ignored. And so it's a very interesting time, and you be a great service to people of Pennsylvania, the voting public, if they actually got to see these candidates in a debate and in a forum, whether in person or virtual.
Right. Yeah. So again, just to underscore, how unusual this cycle is going to be. It's going to be unusual by the vast sums of money being spent, even though spending a lot of money isn't unusual for most election cycles. It definitely the amount of money that's going to be spent in Pennsylvania is going to be quite unusual. And then, as we just talked about, the other wrinkle in the process, is going to be potentially no major debates um, between the major candidates running for Pennsylvania governor and to represent Pennsylvania in the United States Senate, which is a very, very key seat that many people around the country are watching. It could determine who will hold the majority, if Democrats will keep the majority, or if the Republicans can flip the Senate. What happens in Pennsylvania could very much determine, the outcome of who will hold the majority in the United States Senate. So, as much as it seems like we've been immersed in politics over the last several months, for the next two, it's only going to increase and become more intense. So definitely strap in, buckle up, put your helmets on, and prepare for, one of the most memorable finishes to an election year, we'll probably ever witness um, here in Pennsylvania. So, it's definitely not and it's not this is definitely not your grandfather's Pennsylvania election cycle.
Facts. And so a lot of people are asking, like, what is a midterm election? Why is it important? What is the significance? And so the midterm election is an election that basically marks the halfway point in the presidential election process. The presidential election runs every 4 years. And so a midterm election is always, not always, but often seen as a review or an indictment of the president's um, behavior in office, as well as the congressional behavior in office, because the people you are electing in the midterm elections, the majority of them will go to Washington, D.C. and represent you in Congress, whether in a Senate race or a congressional race. And because of the way the races are staggered and structured, you always try to make sure that at least one Senate race and one congressional race is happening within the midterm elections, regardless of what state you live in. And so the midterm elections, happen every couple of years. And they're basically how people say, we like what's going on at the national level, and also we appreciate what's happening locally, or we do not like what is going on. What's very interesting this year is that there has been a split. Even though people always talk about how the Democrats are in charge of Congress, because it's such a slim margin, they do not have the numbers and the threshold to basically do any type of legislation carte blanche. There's a lot of negotiation, a lot of push and pull. And so with the midterm elections, people are able to say, we want one party to have more power, we want one party to have less power. We appreciate what the president is doing, and therefore we want him to have more people in office, or we want him to have less. But what's very interesting right now is what's happening in Pennsylvania. There are so many issues going on with people resigning from office. We have people stepping down. And so these races right now are even more competitive than they have been in the past, because a lot of candidates were people who are running for these specific seats for the very first time. And so people are not only doing the indictment of what's going on at the national level, they're picking people for these positions who have not had them previously. And sometimes people who are running for the first time, which is causing a lot more interest, a lot more money, a lot more nuance to be present in these elections than there usually is. There's also a conversation about the future of the political party process just in general, and having so many new people running is also an indictment of that. And so you haven't, like we said, seen a lot of coalescing in certain areas, but you've seen it in others. And so it's going to be a very interesting election season. On top of that, now you have a lot more funding coming through. A lot of it is also coming from outside of Pennsylvania. And so there's also a conversation that's going to be happening, later in the courts and the legislature, about how much money is needed in Pennsylvania and how that is going to be regulated going forward. Khari?
Yes, and along those lines, and some of what we talked about, earlier, there's an interesting piece we're going to share from CNN that was published today by Chris Saliza from CNN. For those who watch CNN, you're very familiar with Chris Saliza, very well known political analyst. Just wrote a piece called "The Weirdest Campaign in the Country is Happening in Pennsylvania." And there's been some recent coverage that has some an account of Doug Mastriano praying that Trump would seize power and quote unquote rise up prior to January 6th. And we all know that Doug Mastriano was on hand on January 6th at the insurrection. He claims that he left the scene before things got out of hand, but went to the rally that preceded the insurrection. But yeah, now there's this account that Doug Mastriano prayed that Trump would seize power, that would rise up and maintain the office of the presidency after obviously losing the presidency to Joe Biden. So in a campaign cycle here in Pennsylvania that's had so many twists and turns, from uh, the social media war between Fetterman and Oz and crudité and insults about people's health, at least perceived insults. If you're part of the Fetterman team, you feel as though the Oz campaign may try to make light of a very serious health condition, the stroke that he had. So it seems like every time we think that things are going to settle down and it's going to get more normal, it seems that every turn, much like Chris Saliza says, the weirdest campaign in the country is happening in PA, and it doesn't seem like anything's going to change over the next 8 weeks.
Yeah, and that's it. I think that a lot of people are looking at Pennsylvania as an indicator of what's going to be happening in other places. But again, with the situation in Pennsylvania, a lot of people need to be mindful of that. A lot of people who went to January 6th came from Pennsylvania, and there has been conversations about how much to talk about January 6th, how much to talk about what's going on, because people do fear that is emboldening and bolstering people to not accept what's going to happen in November if one party does not win. And so there's ongoing conversations about how to engage, because we know that this election is considered a midterm election. It is considered not a high turnout, a high motivated election, because it's off year, it's not a presidential cycle. And so having these conversations come out, it's meant to galvanize people to be like, you know what, I need to go out and vote. And there's conversations about why there are so many radical people running for office. Is that they were picked or supported, or is it because their message is resonating with people? And so what's going to happen in November is really going to be an indication about what messaging and how people came out. But what is very peculiar for some folks is that Mastriano really is not engaging media. He's really not engaging some of these debates and forums. And so he's able to control and set his own narrative with, his own constituents. And so that does leave a lot of people out. And then if that's how he's running his campaign, if he were to be the person that wins the election, how will he govern for people that he has not campaigned with or spoken to or reached out to? So it's a really pressing time. And again, we're at this 57 days. We're so close, but yet so far away. And so it's going to be, again, very interesting to see if these campaigns pivot, if they become more open, if they focus, more on substantive issues and less on some of the campaign social media going back and forth for the attack.
Absolutely, and along those lines, Chris Salizo's story on the CNN website actually quotes an article from the Philadelphia Inquirer that makes it plain just how different the campaign Mastriano running really is. It says, and these are in quotes: as he tours the Commonwealth, Mastriano has essentially walled himself off from the general public, traveling within a bubble of security guards and jittery aides who aim to not only keep him safe, but to ensure he only comes into contact with true believers. Republican leaders around the state had hoped that Mastriano's unorthodox campaign would evolve over the summer and begin reaching out to undecided voters. Instead, the opposite has happened. Mastriano rarely engages with any media that is not overtly friendly to him. He conducts Facebook Live events and does interviews in places like the One America News Network, but simply refuses to talk to any mainstream outlets. As the New York Times noted last month, Mastriano employs political neophytes in key positions and has for months refused to interact with any mainstream national or local newspapers beyond expelling them from events.
Yeah, I think for transparency purposes, let people know we are. I guess those local news people that have reached out and not received responses, but we will continue to reach out in the future, because again, it's very important that whoever's running for office talks about what their plan is for Black Pennsylvanians, particularly people here in Pittsburgh and southwestern PA, where we are located. But it's very important that people understand they have a right to talk to candidates. They have a right to ask questions of people seeking their vote, and they have a right and an expectation that those answers are met, even if they are not what they want to hear. A lot of times people appreciate knowing what a candidate is going to say, what their platforms are going to be, even if they're in opposition. So it allows them to prepare for what's coming, how to engage, or how to lobby and push for alternative point of view. So again, it's very imperative and important that these debates and forums happen within a democracy, so people can make informed decisions. And the governor really is the head of the Commonwealth. They get to veto legislation. They not only do that, they get to appoint people for various positions to implement their agenda, and they get to really have a very decisive viewpoint with within the Pennsylvania budget, funding is sent for, and again, represent Pennsylvania all across the nation. And so it's very important that people understand who and what they are voting for and what those responsibilities are, not only on a local level, but a national level as well, because, the governor of Pennsylvania, anyone, can vote. And that's very important for the midterm elections. You do not have to vote, along party lines. Any person who is a registered and eligible voter is able to vote for any of the candidates. We pick one, regardless of party. I'm gonna go about your day. So there is also a very, very intensive campaign, on the Shapiro side to get everybody, undecided voters, conservative voters, Republican voters, under this like big tent of a Pennsylvania identified party, as juxtaposed to Mastriano, who's really trying to see and believe that if he can galvanize, kind of like the Karl Rove strategy days, if he can just galvanize conservative voters, he'll be able to win Pennsylvania without thinking about, the majority of Philly and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and absolutely, and along those lines, within the last half an hour, WTAE has shared more. WTAE TV here in Pittsburgh shared some details that have come from a Rolling Stone report that actually has obtained the video that I just referenced a few minutes ago. And it says Doug Mastriano, the Republican candidate for governor, is raising eyebrows with words of prayer that were caught on a video prior to January 6th. The video is from a Zoom group he called the week before the January 6th insurrection. He says, I quote, is a direct quote from Doug Mastriano. It says, I know we're surrounded by wickedness and fear and dithering of inaction, but that's not our problem. Our problem is following your lead. I pray God, Mastriano says during the nearly 2 minute long prayer. Rolling Stone obtained the video, and it was organized by far right Christian nationalists seeking to reinstall Donald Trump in the White House. A pledge to seize the power was part of Mastriano's prayer, and a direct quote is, "We will seize the power that have been given to us by the Constitution and as well by you." Um, Mastriano was in Washington that day and said he respected all police lines he came upon. He's also said to be quoted in the video, I pray for the leaders in the federal government on the 6th of January to rise up with boldness. He's also currently filing a subpoena for his testimony from Congress with the January 6th committee. And the Zoom call was billed as a global prayer for election integrity. And he says, will you bless um, President Trump, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy to outline the fraud that happened in Pennsylvania. And this will embolden them to stand firm and disregard what has happened in Pennsylvania until we have an investigation. Mastriano's campaign has not responded to WTAE Action News's repeated request for comment, as well as clarification on what he meant by seize the power and rise up. And this is all has, been published in the last day. It came out in Rolling Stone first. I'm just reading some stuff that was updated at 6:58 p.m. So right before we came on air. This is from investigative journalist Bob Mayo. So this is again just another interesting turn in an election year that is not short on unexpected turns. But there now is video that Rolling Stone obtained where a week before January 6th, Mastriano makes a prayer on a Zoom call for Republican leaders to seize power and rise up. So, again, if this wasn't the weirdest statewide campaign happening in the country, this is just another controversial moment in this campaign, and I'm sure this is going to get a lot of coverage starting tonight for the rest of the campaign. I know the Shapiro campaign did respond for comment, and they have said that they find that it's chilling. They thought that the video was chilling. I have not seen the video yet. They said it sheds light not only on Mastriano's extreme and dangerous mindset in the lead up to the insurrection, but it's also his continued close association with far right extremists and white supremacists. This is from the Josh Shapiro campaign. So, anybody's hope for things to calm down on that race, I think, will not be heeded. I think this is just only going to become more controversial as we get closer to election day.
Yeah, and unfortunately, January 6th is either the gift or curse that keeps on giving. We know that the Department of Justice is still doing investigations and subpoenas related to what happened on January 6th and related to, you know, people trying to change the election of 2020. Again, in my home state of Georgia, there's still an ongoing, lawsuit and investigation. People are trying to fight subpoenas to see if there was witness and election tampering in regards to calls made to the Secretary of State to try to find votes or disregard votes or get votes kicked out. And so this is something that really, for a lot of people, are saying is a make or break into the rise of fascism within the United States, because a lot of people believed that because of alleged, voter irregularities, that it was their duty to take up arms and really use force to make sure their candidate did not get removed from office in a free and fair election. And as the conversations go, there have been, investigations. There have been audits after audits after audits. People have gone back and matched things with ballots, and it has been pretty relevant to a lot of folks that there wasn't this widespread, voter fraud that was happening. In fact, a lot of people who were convicted of voter fraud were people who thought that they were doing their duty to vote for the former leader, and were a lot of conservatives who were being picked up and caught. And so it's very unfortunate. It's a very unfortunate reality that there's so many people who have fallen victim to these conspiracies and these conspiracy theories that they have, turned to white supremacy and violence, instead of reaching out and understanding that the world is changing and it's becoming more diverse, but that there's still a space and place for them, and instead they're really turning to some really scary points of view. So I know that, again, this new story just broke with Rolling Stone and WTAE, and I do believe now we're going to play the video. I don't think there's any content warnings, but again, we have not seen the video for ourselves. And again, Mastriano at this time has not released a comment. People are reaching out for that. But here is the video that is causing concern for some people across Pennsylvania.
Mastriano's mixing of religion and politics is a high-profile part of his campaign, but the prayer in question was part of a call on Zoom.
I know we're surrounded by wickedness and fear and dithering and inaction, but that's not our problem. Our problem is following your lead. I pray God.
Rolling Stone obtained the video, describing it as, quote, a Zoom call organized by far-right Christian nationalists seeking to reinstall Donald Trump in the White House. A pledge to seize the power was part of Mastriano's prayer.
We'll seize the power that we had given to us by the Constitution and as well by you.
Mastriano was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, but says he respected all police lines as he came upon them. He chartered buses to take Trump supporters to Washington on January 6th. His Zoom prayer was for leaders to rise up on that day.
I pray for the leaders also in the federal government, God, on the 6th of January, that they'll rise up with boldness.
Mastriano is fighting against a subpoena for his testimony from Congress's January 6th committee. In the Zoom video, Mastriano also prays over letters urging Congress to disregard Pennsylvania's election results and promoting debunked claims of election fraud.
You'll bless these letters that President Trump asked me this morning to send to Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, outlining the fraud in Pennsylvania, and this will embolden them to stand firm and disregard what has happened in Pennsylvania until we have an investigation.
Mastriano's campaign hasn't responded to our repeated requests for comment, including on the intended significance of the words "seize the power" and "rise up." Organizers of the Zoom call also haven't responded to our requests for comment.
Pennsylvania just want to make history one way, or another. And again, it's very important that, we're not passing judgment on anybody's religion or religious practice or the way they're praying, but people are just taking account and note of the words used in either the prayer or the statements. It looked like he was reading to me, like he was reading a statement. So I'm not sure if it was a prayer or just a call to action or a conversation or remarks. And so again, I know religion is very sacred to people, and we are not, casting any type of disparagements on people's religion, but just replaying the video. And again, January 6th, what is hard for a lot of folks for a variety of reasons, but when we're talking about building a democracy and we're talking about making democracy work for people who have traditionally felt like abandoned and left out, it goes to show you that the more people get involved in democracy, sometimes things may change. And for a lot of folks, they did see that some of the policies really weren't benefiting them the way that they did. Even right now, there's a lot of conversations about some of these policies that are being put out, whether it's about business and inflation or abortion rights and access. Sometimes things don't pan out the way people foresee, and once people are living under implementation of policies, they change. And whether that be for the governor or a senate or a congressional person, because these are national policies, these midterm elections are an indictment of those policies. And when people fail or when people are harmed by those policies, they're going to come out and vote. And for 2020, a lot of people said, hey, these current policies are not working for me, so I'm going to go the other way. It happens all the time. There are a lot of one-term presidents, in the history of America. And so we'll see if this happens again next year. But right now, what we have are these midterm elections where people are going to vote on whether they like these policies or whether they want to return to the old ways of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the wake of of what you said, there 538.com has released a list of Pennsylvania candidates that are running for Congress or statewide, and they have listed 10 candidates that they believe have fully denied the legitimacy of the 2020 election. Obviously, Doug Mastriano was one. A candidate named Aaron Bashir, who's running in PA2, Jim Bognet in PA8, Dan Muser in PA9, Scott Perry in PA10, Lloyd Smucker in PA11, John Joyce in PA13, Guy Retzenthaler from Western PA in PA14, Glenn Thompson, PA15, and Mike Kelly in PA16. So that's one gubernatorial candidate and 9 candidates for Congress who fully denied the legitimacy of that election. And then there's 3 who raised questions: Mehmet Oz, running for senator; Christian Nascimento, PA4; and Guy Cheriochi in PA6. And accepted with reservations, Brian Fitzpatrick in PA1. And there was 4 candidates who did not comment: David Guluch, who's running in PA5; Lisa Scheller, running in PA7; Republican Mike Doyle, not Congressman Mike Doyle, PA 12, and Jeremy Schaefer running in PA 17. So that's a very interesting list that 538.com has put together around 10 candidates, 9 running for Congress, 1 running for governor, who have outright denied the legitimacy of the 2020 election. So, you know, um, the controversy just won't stop, and Pennsylvania is really, really becoming, not becoming, has is proven to be, one of the true, ground zeros for, um, this epic um, debate on, what happened in 2020, and those who have really, really bought into the big lie. Again, we're trying to be, you know, as journalistic as possible, but we do have to call the big lie, and we are not editorializing when we call the big lie. But there is 10 candidates, 9 running for Congress and 1 running for governor, who have accepted, the big lie as fact, and in fact are running, on that here in Pennsylvania. And I think it is, our responsibility as journalists and political observers to share that information with you. And we have that in the comment section. That was from 538.com.
Yeah, and so Pennsylvania is again on the hearts and minds of like so many. But the cool thing about Pennsylvania is because of Act 77, there was a track record. And because of Act 77 and funding for these Pennsylvania elections, come November, there's going to be another track record about like all of these ballots and where they go, when they're scanned in, how people voted, and so it's going to give people an opportunity to engage. And this is one of the reasons why we have lobbied and pushed out for voter pop-up sites and expansive voting, so that people can see the process up close, so that people can come out. So, voting party pop-ups, not to be combative, but just to engage and to see how people go and navigate and talk to each other, how they don't downplay and disparage each other, and how they just encourage people to vote correctly and legally and honestly, so that people can become registered to vote, for people can vote in these partisan and nonpartisan outreaches. And I think that's what a lot of people did understand, that these opportunities that were open to the whole community were open to the whole entire community. It wasn't just one community that was allowed to come out and participate. It was open to all, and it's going to be open to all again. And so I just encourage you, I know elections are not the funnest thing in the world. And I know elections are not the things that, get most of us, up in the morning. But, just take some time to talk to your friends and your family members, see if they're registered to vote, see if they have questions about voting, and see what policies are, important to them, and to delve, deep into them. There's been a lot of miscommunication, disinformation in the past few days about local elections, about policies coming out. Recently it was announced that Illinois was going to end cash bail. And what did people do? They said, oh my gosh, this purge bill is happening, when in reality, it was a bill that not only ended cash bail, but basically mandated that prosecutors had to have a reason and proof of some type of evidence to hold people and not offer them bails for crimes. But not understanding the bill, not understanding the legislation is the reason why misinformation, disinformation goes through. So again, sometimes take some time out, read the information, engage, people, and that's the things that you have to do. With elections, it gets very easily bogged down with life and work and trying to survive. But voting is so important, and voting allows you to create the conditions for liberation and better opportunities and better investment. Again, we're going to have, supports for childcare, supports for food, supports for affordable housing. There's so many things that are being announced because people voted. And if you want better for your communities and more for your communities, voting is just but one tool that you can use in your toolbox to do that. And that's why electoral organizing is so important. And that's why we push it. It's not the end all be all. You're not going to change everyone's life with one election, but you can significantly and immediately change some people's lives. And that's why it's so important to be registered to vote and engage and not the what electoral organizing as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. As we close out another episode of the One Hood Power Hour, unfortunately, some things came up. We weren't able to have John Delano and Chris Potter join us. We hope to have them back on very soon. But we did cover a whole range of topics and some of the latest breaking news happening today in the state of Pennsylvania around the upcoming elections. We are going to do our statewide preview next Monday. We will be joined by John Mysick of the PA Capital Star and Stephen Caruso of PA Spotlight. So we're really excited about that. But we definitely want to get John Delano and Chris Potter back on to give us a local perspective of what's happening here in Western Pennsylvania as we approach the midterms. So we will figure out how we'd have to get them back in. And, I know being reporters, things come up. So I'm sure they're out covering something. And with everything going on, I wouldn't be surprised if they were right now covering the story that we were just broke from Rolling Stone. I wouldn't be shocked if we turn on KDK or WESA in the next few hours or at the latest tomorrow morning and see them covering this Rolling Stone story. That, for those who are just joining us, we just mentioned a breaking news story that Rolling Stone has posted video from a Zoom call that they obtained where it was several days before the January 6th insurrection. And Doug Mastriano appears to be praying for Republican leaders to rise up and be bold and seize power, which some have interpreted as kind of a prayer, in support of the insurrection in the days leading to that. Obviously, there has been no statement or any clarification from the Mastriano campaign, as we all are waiting patiently for that. But given recent events, there hasn't been a lot of interaction between the Mastriano campaign and mainstream media. So we may not ever hear any clarification of what was meant by rise up and seize power, and address what he perceived as election fraud in the state of Pennsylvania in the 2020 election. So,
Yeah, so a lot happening, a lot going on. But there's still some things happening. So, next week is going to be National Voter Registration Week and Outreach Week. We also know there's going to be another Board of Elections meeting. So if you have questions about how the elections are run, what's going to happen with these elections, make sure to tune into the Board of Elections meeting. I believe it's on the 20th, at 3 p.m. I also know that BPEP under Tim Stevens, the Black Political Empowerment Project, is also holding some press conferences and putting out some information as well about what they see and happening for elections. So again, I know a lot of people are making their election day plans to be at the polls on election day. This is going to be, something that's very intense for a lot of folks. And so I just encourage you to make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you have your correct voting precincts. Redistricting did happen. Some people, have been voting by mail, new election, new year, new change of address. And so it's going to be very important that people update their information, double check where their polling place is going to be, especially if this is their first time voting in person after the pandemic, just because, again, polling places have changed. And again, I hope everyone just take some time, hug a family member, a friend, have dinner with a neighbor, but really, relax and understand that regardless of what happens on November 9th, we still have to be in community with each other. We still have to work together. And so, make sure you're registered to vote, but please stay motivated, stay focused, and stay energized, because this election is not the end all be all for all of us, but it is an indicator of how much more work we're going to have to do in order to get free. And with that, I'll turn it over to Khari to close us out.
Thank you again, Miracle. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and for those that were hoping to see John Delano and Chris Potter tonight. Some things came up. There's a lot of breaking news happening, so you know, um, just that's the nature of the news business. We hope to get them back on soon. Like I said, next Monday we will be joined by John Mysick from the PA Capital Star, and Stephen Caruso from Spotlight PA, and hopefully there's not another Rolling Stone story that happens Monday night, and we lose our guest last minute. So let's hope that things calm down a little bit in an election season that doesn't seem to want to calm down. But thanks again for everyone joining us. Thank you, producer John, for always holding us down. I did want to mention, for those who are itching to get out and talk to voters, we have a joint event this Sunday, starting at 10 a.m. At a Highland Park at the Entry Garden. We're working with PA United, as well as Bend the Arc. We're going to be doing some canvassing. We're going to have some food. We're going to have some music. We're going to get some inspiration from local elected leaders. I believe Mayor Gainey is going to be in the house. And we're going to start the day at 10 a.m., just with, some words of inspiration about how important the cycle is. And then folks are going to fan out into the greater Pittsburgh area and knock on some doors and talk to voters about why it's important for them to come out and vote in this November election. That'll be Sunday, September 18th at 10 a.m. at the Highland Park Entry Garden. So as soon as you go into Highland Park, we'll be right there. We'll have music. We're going to have food. We're going to have speakers. And we're going to have that probably from about 10 to 10:45. And then from about 10:30, 10:45 to right before the Steeler game starts, we're going to be out knocking on doors, talking to people. We're going to come back. Then we're going to adjourn right at 12:30 so folks can get home before kickoff, because we know in Western Pennsylvania, you don't want to bother people during the Steeler game, particularly when they're playing the Patriots. So that'll be again this Sunday, September 18th. We're calling the event "Protecting Our Freedoms," and we'll be out knocking on doors, out talking to folks throughout the city's East End, as well as some other neighboring municipalities in Allegheny County. So if you're in the Pittsburgh area, in the East End, on Sunday morning, please come by, have some food, listen to some music, listen to some inspiring words from local leaders. And if you're so inclined, go out, knock on doors for a couple hours, and then you can rest up and watch the Steeler game after and feel like you had a full day of participatory politics, as well as the age-old Western PA tradition of watching Steeler games on Sunday afternoon. And with that, we are going to adjourn for the night. Want to again thank Miracle. Want to thank producer John. But if you can make it Sunday at 10 a.m. at Highland Park, please do. And then also tune in for this Sunday's Sunday night sit down. I believe we have State Representative Sarah Innamorato, who has been rumored to be making a big political announcement in the coming weeks. I'm not going to blow up her spot like I was accused of doing during the Netroots forum that we had. I'm not going to blow up her spot, but we are going to potentially talk about potential rumors that are out there and see, what she has to say about her political future. But yeah, very, very much looking forward to our Sunday night sit down with Sarah Innamorato this Sunday at 7 p.m. as well. So for those who are, our usual joiners and viewers, thank you so much. And on behalf of producer John and my illustrious co-host Miracle Jones, This is Khari Mosley signing off from the One Hood Power Hour. See you this Sunday at 7 with Sarah Enamorado, and this coming Monday with Stephen Caruso and John Misick. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Take care.